I would do a live on a poll that I actually posted yesterday, and just to kind of recap the poll, it was about the mind-body emotion connection. And so I asked, like, where do you feel that, well, first of all, I posted a quote that said basically what the mind cannot hold, the body holds. And it's a really powerful, profound message, because it means that, you know, sometimes we can't basically wrap our head around something, right? Maybe it's something traumatic that's happening to us. Maybe it's some, you know, diagnosis we've been given. Maybe it's the death of someone. Maybe it's some big family secret that we just found out. Whatever the case is, when our mind sometimes has trouble to really process it and wrap our mind around it, what will happen is the body will take on the energy of that, right? So our brain is this amazing little instrument that knows how to compartmentalize things. So, you know, something doesn't completely immobilize us. Our brain can kind of store it in a sort of like a file somewhere else in our large brain, so that we're not thinking about that thing every day, all day, and it's not completely immobilizing us. But the energy of that experience or that memory or that emotion, it does not necessarily just go away. It's not like poof, magical leaves, right? It goes somewhere. The energy of that gets stored in the body. And generally it gets stored in organs, in muscles, in tissues, okay? Anywhere in the body can kind of take on the energy of that, right? And then it translates. And then, like in Chinese medicine, there is a really profound belief system that each organ in the body actually takes on certain emotions, along with the chakra system, which I don't know if you guys know much about the chakras, but we have 7 chakras, and they kind of correlate to different organs as well. And so the belief is that different organs will take on different emotions, which I've talked about before, like the liver taking on anger, right, and resentment. The heart takes on disappointment and grief, like things like that, right? So as that organ kind of absorbs the vibration of whatever emotion, of whatever experience you've had that, you know, you really couldn't process through, it kind of festers. So think of it like, if you're not doing active work in trying to work through that emotion, process it, and then release it, it's going to just kind of stagnate in that organ or in that body system. And stagnation in Chinese medicine is also one of the things, like, we don't want the body to experience, right? Stagnation is when, you know, there's no flow of energy, no flow of blood. And so that is another precursor to basically dis-ease in the body. So there's this wonderful book I wanted to recommend while I'm on here today. It's called Anatomy of the Spirit. It's by Carolyn Myss. She's basically an intuitive doctor, okay? So her story I'm not even going to go into, but it's fascinating. And this book really goes into how, over the course of 25-30 years of her experience treating people with different diseases, whether it's a mental illness or a physical illness, how they all can be traced back to some emotional trigger, to some event, to several events, to emotions that weren't processed through properly. And it's just a fascinating book. If you want a really good read, it's a heavy read. You have to kind of go slow with it, but it's amazing. And so that's the basis of kind of what I'm talking about with you guys today. So, you know, I guess I wanted to just kind of lead you guys through 2 exercises that you can actually do to help with processing these emotions, right? To process them through, because we all have them. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We've all been dealt things in life that maybe we don't really want to think about, or we don't want to process, right? But if we don't, the body does, right? The body takes it on, and that's the last thing we want to do. So the first one, as I've obviously talked to you guys about breath, and your awareness of the breath, the first one I want to discuss is just a really simple breath technique. And it's the sigh breath. okay, there is something super duper healing about a sigh, just a really good sigh. You know, we'll intuitively sigh when we're like overwhelmed with something. You know, our bodies just intuitively kind of take a deep inhale and then a right? We sometimes do that. You see kids do it, animals will kind of even do it, like a sigh, yawn, things like that. So it's like an intuitive built-in mechanism for our body to just sort of release. But if we do a solid practice of like 1 to 3 minutes of an inhale and then a sigh breath out, you will see the difference that makes in your, like when you come back out of that breath pattern, in your demeanor, in your clarity, in your head, in your calmness, okay? So what I like to do for myself and what I do with clients is, if there's something really heavy they're dealing with on an emotional level, every day just taking a minute or 2 or 3 to practice a sigh breath while they're kind of thinking about that experience, that memory, that trauma, and just imagining on that sigh that it's like a let go, right? A surrender. There is so much strength in surrendering and in letting go. And I think that too much of the emphasis, you know, in healing and, you know, kind of awareness of ourselves and stuff now is so focused on like what we have to do, what we have to do, what we have to do. But the real magic just kind of flows when you allow and you surrender it and you just kind of let it go. And so, you know, I know people watching may have different belief systems, whatnot. I personally do believe in God. And so for me, that was a very powerful thing when I learned in my life to just be able to sigh it out and just say, I release it to you, God, or I surrender it to you, God, or take it over, I let it go to you, God. Just whatever came to me in that moment, I would just kind of repeat that mantra, sometimes out loud, sometimes in my head as I was doing the sigh breath out, okay? So just for the breath technique, it's very simple. You just want to either sit or lay down. You can shut down the eyes and just kind of like focus right in the middle of the eyebrows where the third eye would sit. And you would just take an inhale through the nose, and then you're going to open the mouth and okay, and just sigh it out. And again, when you're doing that sigh release, you want to just try to focus on the situation or the memory or whatever it is that you're trying to let go. And then you can also kind of in your head sort of let that affirmation play of like, I release it to you, God, or I surrender, or I'm letting it go. And if you do that solid practice of just and you can even just kind of roll the neck and the shoulders on that sigh, you will literally feel after just 1 minute, you will feel your body just melt, and your parasympathetic system will take over, and it will allow your body to go into that rest and digest state instead of that fight or flight, okay? While it's also physically allowing your body to release, right? From a mental standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, you're allowing that release in the sigh. So that's the first technique that I really, really like for releasing, surrendering, kind of letting go of emotions, okay? The second technique is actually a Tai Chi. It's a Tai Chi method. I don't know if you're familiar with Tai Chi, but Tai Chi is sort of like a moving meditation. And so it's meditative kind of body movements that go in a specific order. And as you do them, you're following an intention, right? So an intention of releasing for this purpose, right? And there's a stance. So I'm about to stand up. Let me see if I can move this chair so I can show you guys. Okay, so the stance for Tai Chi would be, you can do the left or right leg forward, however, whichever one you want to start with. I'm going to start with my left. So I just slightly put my left foot forward and my right foot back, just maybe hip width distance. It doesn't have to be super far. So I'm kind of standing like this, as you can see. And the arm movement, you're either going to be pushing away, and when you're pushing away, you're always bending slightly at the knee, but you're pushing away or you're bringing towards. You're pushing away or you're bringing towards. So that's going to be the body movement. And then the intention behind it would be, let's say you're dealing with jealousy. Okay, let's just use that as an emotion. Let's say you're just really dealing with this jealousy and it's been harboring, in your heart for a long time, in your body, and you've had a really hard time letting it go. Then you literally, on the push away, you want to literally say out loud, I release jealousy. And then on the pulling back in, you want to pull into you what the opposite of that would be. So maybe it would be love, maybe it would be acceptance, right? So you physically get to say what you're releasing and bringing in and receiving, right? Releasing and receiving, and you get to do it with the body movement. And then after a few sessions of doing it that way, you can switch to the other side where you put the other foot forward and the other foot back, and then do a few more sessions that way. So it's going to look like this, for instance, right? So you're going to say, I release jealousy, I receive love. 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 And it's just going to go into that flow, and you'll get into a very meditative flow with it. You can say fewer words. It doesn't have to be that wordy. You can just, when you're on the push out, you can like push out anger. So you can just say anger releases, calmness I receive. Anger releases, calmness I receive. However, whatever wording works best for you is totally adequate. But the goal is to get that intention behind the actual physical words and then behind the body movement. And so both of these practices are great, even like I said, if you can only do a minute a day, but just getting that continuous daily practice is so, so important. With all like releasing practices, with all breath work, with all modalities that are really working on our nervous system and working on that very, very deep like cellular biology level, it's not the quantity as far as how long you're doing it each day, it's the consistency of it. So even if it is 1 minute a day and you're alternating doing, one of those each day, that's better than waiting a week and not doing anything and then doing like a 30-minute session, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any further questions about like somatic releases or the body and emotions, my breathwork one-on-one sessions, group sessions, couple sessions are great. It's a great way to start your practice and then learn some really solid techniques and kind of know what it feels like to be in the body present that way, and then be able to go home and do your homework with those. So sometimes for most people it takes 1 or 2 sessions a month for a couple months, and then they can roll on their own after that. So yeah, so that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this.